Hello, NCCA students. I'm Aaron Caldwell, and it's an honor to be here to share my own experiences and skills that I've developed over the years on how to market myself in hopes of giving you some strategies you might find useful to market yourself as a ceramic artist in your career. So this first slide is personal strategies. It's like my golden slide. So these are things that I do actively and consistently in every opportunity that I put myself out for. So the first step, which is like one of the biggest steps, is concrete now, vague later. What does that mean? Concrete now is all about setting a goal that you're interested in right now, figuring out what you want in this moment. A lot of talk in the community or in any field really, even outside of art, is thinking about the future and having a solid future in mind. But when that happens, you oftentimes don't really know what you're wanting right now. So serving your present self is very, very, very important. So that can be something like you want to be in more shows. And so that's your goal, and you want to figure out how to be in more shows. And so that may impact things in the future. You can kind of generalize what you want in the future, but as we all know, the future can change quite rapidly, especially with us with this unexpected pandemic that occurred over the past year. But the future changes. It's never there's no foundation for it, and so having a vague idea of what you want in the future is good enough as long as you have a solid goal that serves your present self. And so definitely have a concrete now, and it's okay to have a vague later. Establish and maintain a support group. So if you have, let's say you created this concrete now, so you know that you want to be in shows, then when you establish a support group, that support group knows what you're interested in this moment, and they can best support you and your artistic career. And so now they're probably looking for shows that might interest you, or they might send you links to websites where you can look for shows, or send you to galleries or museum websites where they're currently looking for artists to show in their spaces. And so that support group will know how to better serve you if you have this concrete now. But before you have a support group, you got to think about who you want in that support group. So that's what establishing is all about. If you're currently in college and you have a decent relationship with your professor, and you all are on speaking terms, because I do know, reality speaks and says that not everyone is going to have good relationships with the professors. So if you don't have good relationship with your professors, and you can't really establish that connection with them and let them know that, hey, it'd be much appreciated if you were someone that I could come to for support, for advice on how to better myself as an artist. Then you can branch out to some friends, the cohort that you're in, and do the same there. You can also branch out even further and go out into the community. Is there a gallery that you frequent? Are there people on Instagram that you enjoy the work and you would love to have a better relationship with them? Like, reach out. Your support group can consist of anyone you feel would best support your needs, and make it clear what you're interested in. And so naturally, these people will fall into your support group when they see that you're passionate about something specific right now. And when they come across things that remind them of you, they're going to send it to you. And so when you establish that support group, also maintain it. And maintaining requires you to keep them updated in what you're doing. Don't think that you created this support group and then never keep them updated with anything you're doing. Let them know what you're interested in. If it changes, you're just in a show. Don't be shy in letting them know, and keep them up to date on what you're doing, because then that shows them that you're invested in that relationship that you're building. You're always building with them, and that you want them to be involved in your career. The next two are be proactive and be present. These kind of go hand in hand. So you created this support group that now supports your concrete now, and That's it. Like that's actually not it. You don't want to just rely on the support group. So even though the support group might be sending you tips and strategies and might be sending you shows, it's still very important to do that yourself. You want to go out of your way and look for things. Be proactive. Don't just sit and wait for things to come to you, because that won't happen especially when you're just getting started. It's very important for you to be looking for those opportunities yourself, and then be present, be in things. Being in things does not just mean being in shows, being in residencies. That might be attending shows. That might be like, there's a lot of digital talks over the past year. So be present in multiple of them. Maybe they're quite often from the same organization, and the person that is hosting them might notice that you're frequently there. And that might be a way to foster some communication. Be present also doesn't just mean being there, but also speaking up, asking questions, engaging in the conversation. Make it clear that you exist to people. It's like basically shouting without shouting, "Hey, I exist. Pay attention to me." When you're present, not only physically, but socially, people will remember you, and that will also increase your chances of getting invites or getting word of things that might best suit your interests right now. And then another thing, apply to anything that sparks slight interest. So anyone that knows me knows that I like to apply to things if it's something that I qualify for, and I'm like, I'm kind of interested in this, or I'm really interested in this, I apply for it. I don't differentiate how interested I am. If there is a slight interest, that means interest, and apply to it. You never know what opportunities come your way, even if you think that it's something that you aren't qualified for yet, in terms of like, you don't think your work is up to par. Don't let yourself be the judge, because you're not. The reviewing committee is the judge of who gets things and who doesn't. And so let the reviewing committee decide if you are ready for this opportunity or not. I have gotten a lot of things where I honestly was like, not sure if my work was ready for it, but I put my ego aside, just get it over. And I submitted my materials, and the reviewing committee of those things were like, yeah, we actually want you to have this opportunity. And so don't sell yourself short. Let the reviewing committee decide that. Your only requirement for applying for things is, one, do you qualify? And if you do, are you interested? If it's yes and yes, apply. The last thing is research location, grant, and previous artists. So when I find things I'm interested in, I always research the location. In terms of like, if it's a residency, what's happening around the area? Will I feel safe? Is it an environment that I'm interested in general? And then the place itself, like, what have they done over the past couple of years? What is their mission statement? What are they interested in? Who are they trying to support? A lot of those questions really will impact where the opportunity falls on my list of interests. So I might be like, oh, that sounds amazing. But, those research results make me very vague or very unsure about if that's something I actually want to do. And that saves you a lot of time. You don't want to go somewhere and find out that you're miserable. Now, you never really know until you're actually there. But if you know yourself and you know what you're looking for, because you make that concrete now, and you know what kind of places you want to be, if the opportunity does not fit the bill, it's okay to put it lower on your list. If it does, and you're like, hey, there's actually a lot of things in that area that would interest me. Like, they have this museum, or they have this gallery, or they have this park, whatever your interests are, or it's by the ocean, and I make work about sea life. I don't know. The location might impact where that opportunity falls on your list. Same thing with grants, like, and looking up previous artists. that either went to the residency or had that grant or were in shows that were at the gallery. You know, doing that research about what kind of artists got those grants, for example, and what they did with that money might help you figure out, where your idea falls. Like, oh, my idea is kind of similar to this, or oh, I wasn't really expecting to really do much, but a lot of all artists that have gotten this kind of went above and beyond in comparison to like what I'm doing. And so you kind of get a sense of what um, the reviewing committee is kind of looking for. And that might help you better adjust or keep the idea that you have and submit that material so that you have a better chance of getting it. So research is a big part. Don't go into anything blind. Unless that's your thing. If that's your thing, go ahead and keep it. But I'm someone that likes to know what I'm getting myself into before I get myself into it. So I'm big on research. So opportunities, these are just a couple ways that I go about getting opportunities. Like, how do I find them or hear about them? The first thing is sign up for newsletters for ceramic and not ceramic organizations that interest you. So I want to emphasize especially not ceramic organizations. And we have this beautiful, lovely ceramic community that I love so much, but that's not all there is. We are artists. Yes, we're ceramic artists, but we're also artists. And not ceramic organizations, so organizations or institutions that aren't solely based off of ceramics are spaces for us too. And so we should feel inclined to look at those places for opportunities as well. And so big and small institutions. So don't just think big names, the giants of our community. Also think about the smaller ones, the ones that you may not have heard much about, but you caught wind of them and that they're doing a residency or that they're about to have a show. Apply to it. Any show that interests you is a good show. Any grant, who doesn't like money? So any grant really is a good grant. Any residency that fits your needs is a good residency. So don't get caught up in the name. Like kind of figure like there's brand name organizations and then there's like mom and pop organizations. Both matter in the situation. So don't discriminate between which ones you go to, as well as is it ceramic focused or not. You're an artist, so go to all of them. And sign up for those newsletters, because when they send out those emails frequently, sometimes when it's application season, that will be included in the newsletter. So you will catch wind of it as soon as they're ready to announce it, and you have time to get your materials ready so that you have the best application you can possibly give. Next thing is callforentry.org. This is a wonderful website all about finding residencies, finding shows, finding grants, finding public art opportunities if that's your thing. You just curate your search and then it populates like these are the things locally in your area, nationally, internationally. It gives you all the things that you want, and it's very easy to keep track of shows that you're interested in applying to, and you don't have to apply to them, but it's nice to see like, oh, this show is happening in Oklahoma and it's all about plants and I make plant stuff. Now you can apply to it. How else would you hear about it if you didn't look through Call for Entry? And so it's a great website for that. There's Instagram as well. I'm assuming we all use Instagram. And Instagram's a great tool for finding opportunities. Artists sometimes will post opportunities if keeping up to date with their stories. They typically post it on their story. And then there's also two Instagram accounts that also post opportunities quite frequently. There's Clay Crits, who posts like a whole bunch of opportunities monthly, and they have like a story highlight on their Instagram page. And you can just go through it and see the grants, the residencies, the shows, the calls for shows that are open. The same thing with the Color Network. The Color Network does prioritize supporting artists of color, but some of those opportunities aren't specifically to artists of color. So if you do follow them, you might see some of that if you aren't an artist of color. But regardless of if you are or not, I think everyone should follow them because they're a great organization that is supporting artists of color, highlighting them and showcasing their talent and opportunities. But yeah, these are great two Instagram accounts that I would also recommend in terms of finding opportunities. If you're not really interested in just following a bunch of different artists and you have like digital social anxiety or something, just following these accounts is, you don't have to talk to anybody. All you gotta do is follow them, and you get in on all the all the deets. Then also artist CVs. I don't do this as much anymore, but when I first started getting into ceramics, I spent a lot of time looking at my favorite artists and their CVs. CVs are public knowledge in most cases, and you can see what grants they got. You can see what shows they've been in, where they taught workshops, what residencies did they do. Look at the ones that are in areas that interest you, and does it still exist? Is the call open, or will it be open soon? Great. Let me put this down on my list of things I'm going to apply to, and I'm going to get to it. It's a great way of finding those opportunities. It's just looking at what other artists have done, and then trying to see if you can do them too. Then also mentors and friends. So again, that support group, that support group will bring opportunities to you. There have been a lot of opportunities that I've gotten word of, and have on my list of things to apply to in the future, because friends or mentors put it on my radar. So don't knock the benefit of being engaged with mentors, being engaged with friends. I'm not saying only have friends just so that you get opportunities, but when you are naturally building these relationships with people, and they see that again, you have that concrete now, and you're passionate about what you do, and they see something that reminds them of you, they're gonna send it to you 100% without a doubt. Then there's treat every opportunity you accept like the biggest opportunity ever. So I want to emphasize every opportunity you accept. So if you accept an opportunity, make sure it is one that you are excited to do. Don't let it be something that you're I'm just gonna do it just because it's being offered. Don't do that. If you accept it, you should show why you accepted it. You should be passionate about what you're doing, whether that's a show, a talk, workshop, residency. Be excited about it. Be engaged in the best way you possibly can. Be sincere and genuine, and treat it like it's like the greatest thing ever. I'm not saying be fake, but show it in the best way that you feel comfortable, so that people know that you were the right choice for that opportunity. And then there's digital opportunities. So if applying to shows, that costs money, then shipping the work also costs money. Going to residencies may cost money. So if you're just in a situation where you financially you just can't do it, I get it. That's me most of the time. Then digital opportunities exist. There are digital residencies. There are digital shows. There are digital talks. So finding out how to be part of that, that's going to save you a lot of money because you don't have to physically be anywhere other than in your home or office or wherever you want to partake in it. But yeah, finding those digital opportunities, which are typically posted on Instagram, or in those newsletters, or on Instagram, or on call for entry, but really looking for those digital opportunities. Don't knock them. Yes, there's this unspoken uppityness about physical versus digital, but I mean, to me, an opportunity is an opportunity if you're interested in it. Don't get caught up in the prestige of anything. If you are interested, do it. Like, your interest matters most. Don't think about what it will do for you. Think about, is it something I want to do? And so if it's a digital opportunity, so be it. Like, do it. Then also search by city in Google or Google Jobs. This is something I've been doing recently, actually. Especially Google Jobs. It's like, oh, okay, so um, so say I wanted to like be in Detroit. Say Detroit, and I type in Detroit art in Google. It'll populate different things that relate to Detroit and art, and so I will see different organizations or events that relate to art in Detroit. I can click through there. I can go to websites for specific institutions, and I can find a slew of information about opportunities. They have an opportunity page probably. They might have grants and residencies. They might have a call for a show that's coming soon, and you're like, oh shoot, I can apply for this. So it's a quick way of just like finding places in very specific cities, because there's a lot of art organizations and institutions out there. So it's really hard to get a hold of every single one. So you gotta just do your best to find ways around the big names kind of being everywhere. And that's one way of doing that. Another way is Google Jobs. So Instagram has this like bias on what they show to their users. So a lot of smaller organizations typically go unseen on Instagram. But Google Jobs, from my knowledge, at least from my experience so far, is almost pretty unbiased. I've seen all sorts of organizations from big or small. Of course, like the very first couple ones will probably be big organizations, but if you just keep scrolling down, you'll see other places that you may have never heard of. And so again, I just type in Baltimore art or Baltimore ceramics. And yes, it's specific about jobs, but if you're like, I'm not looking for a job in a new city, that's fine. Still type in like Baltimore ceramics, Baltimore art. Look through what like jobs are offering, and don't focus on the job, but focus on the place that's offering the job. Go to their website, and then same thing, look for the opportunities page, look for the residencies or grant page, their show page. And like that's a great way of finding other organizations, because sometimes small organizations are hiring for positions and you may not be interested in it, but they're also hiring for a digital, like a virtual teaching artist position, and you're like, oh, I can do a workshop, and now you're in the running for a temporary job, or you went on there and you're not interested in that, but they're having a call for a show, and you can apply to that instead. So don't knock Google Jobs, people, and then be excited and detailed in your writing. So I am of the mindset that if I want something and I'm, only limited to writing, I got to make sure that my writing is exciting. And I don't mean 50 exclamation marks in my writing. I just mean being very descriptive and intentional with the words I use in describing my excitement. I'm painting a picture with words on how excited I am about what I want to do and what I am trying to do, specifically what I'm trying to do, and specifically how it's going to impact me, and specifically what it means to fund this interest of mine, or choose me for this opportunity. And so like really being excited in your writing, it's gonna come off as that when someone reads it. They might be reading a lot of like monotonous, dry, very formal writing, which is fine with what that is, because people have different writing styles. But you might stand out if they're reading a bunch of those, and they're like, oh shoot, this person's like clearly excited about how they're telling us what they're interested in doing. And so that's one way to potentially stand out and get those opportunities that you're trying to get. Now, how do I manage? So the very first point is one that I have learned this year. Taking breaks. It's so important to take breaks. You don't want to burn out. It's okay to kind of just take things at your do things at your speed. You do things, then you take a break. You do things and you take a break. And when you're taking a break, it's okay to not do anything during that break because that's what a break is. Don't take a break and then still do things, unless you want to. But it's okay to take breaks, and you should take breaks. That's the best way I go about things, and keep my sanity when I'm getting a lot of emails about different opportunities. I remind myself that I'm in control of myself and what I do. And if I need to be mentally checked out, I'm gonna be mentally checked out. Okay. Then the next thing, saying not now, but maybe later. So if you're taking a break, even if you're not taking a break, and you just get an opportunity, and even if it's something you apply to, and you're like, actually, this isn't something that I want, or this is a great opportunity, but it's not something I want right now. But it is something that I am interested in. And so if I have the opportunity to do this thing again, in the future, I'd be more than happy to follow up with that and do this. And so that keeps the door slightly open. Like if you just say no, it might just like shut the door and you gotta like get the key again to open it up. But if you say like a maybe later, it's like when they're closing the door, but you like quickly put your foot in between the door and the wall, and so it doesn't go all the way, it just stops there. Like that's what that is. Like that's what that does. So this is another thing that I do when I'm getting a lot of like emails, and the reception has been pretty good. People have like mentioned in the emails like, okay, like thank you for letting us know. We'll keep you in mind moving forward. When I used to just say no, like I didn't get told that. So there is a noticeable difference in how I'm framing my emails or my responses as like a maybe later. Financial assistance. So like I said, I understand if you ain't got the money to do things, you ain't got the money to do things. And a lot of things that I have done physically, like I wouldn't be able to do without funding. And so looking for those scholarships, grants, try your best to get grants. Look, I did a crowdfunding, a source funding once, just so I can go to Penland. And it felt shameful at first, getting it out there. But people that want to support you are going to support you. So if you've been fostering this support group, which is that next point, like you will get assisted financially if people can. Don't go in expecting to get supported financially, but just throw it out there, see if you get any traction. If you get support financially, great. If you don't, just be understanding that not everyone is capable of dropping money on the dime for you or for anyone or even for themselves. But don't be ashamed of asking for support financially from people in your support group or just people in general. Because there are people who supported me that I don't necessarily think are like immediately in my support group, but they wanted to support me in general. Then the last point, not every opportunity is a needed opportunity. You might feel the need to just be a yes man and do every opportunity that comes your way, or that you hear of. But it is okay to not be interested in an opportunity. I have just given shook no's about like it's not something I'm interested in, or just like didn't really engage in the opportunity presented to me. It's just not something I'm into, and that's okay. These people are casting a wide net in hopes of catching some fish, some artists. And it's okay if you're that fish that slips through the cracks of the net. Like it's not the end of the world. The whole world isn't going to come crashing down because you specifically didn't take the opportunity. There are plenty of opportunities out there. Again, there are a lot of art institutions and organizations out there. A lot of them are going to have opportunities specifically suited for you. So don't see every opportunity as an opportunity that you need to get. It's okay to be like, that's not one for me. And me doing that has allowed me to have some sanity in terms of like figuring out what I want and what I don't want, because I know my concrete now. And my future is always going to be vague. I mean, I might have like a faux concrete future, a faux concrete later, but I know myself. I like to change my mind, very quickly about what I want to do in the future. So I personally don't focus on the feature too much. I have a vague idea, general idea of what I want, but that concrete now is so grounded that I know what opportunities are needed and what aren't. Um, but these are the kind of tips and strategies that I have to offer to you all. Feel free to reach out if you have any questions. Here's my Instagram, ceramics and stuff. I post about ceramics and other stuff. And then my email is right there as well. I will say, I am not someone who is always on. And that means like mentally and like physically um, on Instagram, but I will respond if you reach out at some point. If you need someone to talk to, if you need someone to like read something within reason, or just like need to, if you want me to be part of your support group, like maybe I'm someone you feel like is necessary. I say don't knock anyone regardless of how much experience they have. I've gotten a lot of experience or opportunities or tips from friends or peers who have been doing this just as long as me or shorter. I treat everyone with grace and respect. Everyone has something to offer to you. I only have like 4 years under my belt in terms of like touching clay, and maybe 3 years of actually feeling like an artist. But I've sat here and given you all these tips that I've created over the years. So definitely don't knock anyone out. But feel free to reach out to me or follow my journey and see what I'm up to next. But thank you for listening, and I hope that this presentation offered you lots and lots of advice that you can take or can't take. You get to decide what matters most to you in this presentation. I will not be offended. But thank you, and I hope you all have a great day. Bye.
Hello, NCECA students. It is great to be here and share my experiences and skills with all of you. I hope this helps you to further your career and gives you helpful information as you navigate your next steps. My name is Iren Tete, and I will be speaking about residencies, workshops, and clay opportunities. Before I begin, I wanted to share a little bit about my work and my research. My work is a reflection of time, both real and imagined, and time is reflected in the work, especially in this piece titled Phosphine Memory that is covered in silver leaf. The viewer is reflected as they walk around the piece, and the reflection is always changing. You can see a part of yourself reflected as you walk past. The silver leaf exists in this almost space. It is almost a mirror, and it is almost fog. It is disorienting and confuses the senses, allowing for knowing and feeling to coalesce. I'm negotiating between reality, possibility, between connection and estrangement, and between forwards and backwards. This work is from my most recent show in Tampa, Florida, and the show was titled Porous Thoughts and Fragile Moments. I started making this work after reading architectural theory discussing how human memory is dependent upon our experience in physical space. It is about memory and architecture, or specifically about the nature of memory, how it is embodied, skeletal, and muscular in its essence, not merely cerebral. This lattice piece of the installation was very labor-intensive. I spent over 100 hours just silver leafing the interior and exterior. It is absurd, but it says something about time, about life, death, and about being human. To me, these lattice forms that I make are simultaneously lattices, ladders, windows, and modular breeze blocks, but ultimately they are structures of thought. By creating structures, whether they're logical, illogical, or somewhere in between, I'm searching for the almost. It is a word that understands that things are not absolute. Now that I have given you a framework for understanding my work, I wanted to introduce myself, where I come from, and tell you all about the workshops, residencies that I have been to. So I am from Bulgaria. It is a very small Eastern European country that was part of the communist bloc. It has a very long and varied architectural history that ranges from these monasteries. This particular one was erected during the Bulgarian Renaissance period, to mid-19th century buildings such as this ethnographic museum that is part of the Baroque style, and then to these communist apartment blocks that cover the urban landscape of the capital of Sofia, which is where I'm from. In some parts of the city, these styles are merged together and present a succinct and confusing history. I see it as a blur of past, present, and unimagined future. Time is intertwined and nothing is static, even the concrete. The meaning of these structures evolves over time. After coming to the United States, I attended the College of William and Mary in Williamsburg, Virginia. I was a pre-med major, and specifically kinesiology and health sciences, but somehow I discovered the clay studio, and what drew me in was the building itself. It is in the old power plant, and I first studied under Marlene Jack. And during my sophomore year, Mike Jabor came, and I spent another 2 years with him. During my time at William and Mary, I was the studio assistant, and I spent time mixing glazes, mixing clays, firing both electric and gas kilns, and learning a lot about processes and materials. Through spending a lot of time researching different organizations that offer facilities for clay, I discovered Watershed, which is in beautiful Newcastle, Maine. I emailed the director at the time asking if they needed volunteers for the upcoming 25th anniversary Salad Days event, and he said that I could come to Maine for 2 weeks. I was offered free food and a place to camp in exchange for working full days in preparation for the big celebration. During this time, I met really wonderful people with whom I still keep in touch with, and I saw my first beehive kilns. And this just goes to show that don't be afraid to email people, ask, hey, can I come? How can I help? And the worst thing that can happen is for them to say no. After graduation, I spent a large portion of the summer as a work study at Aeromont in Gatlinburg, Tennessee. This is a really great opportunity for young artists of all media. In exchange for a full work week, you're able to get free housing, food, and are able to select from a variety of classes. I took a workshop with Sunshine Cobb, as well as a workshop with Jenny Mendez. And the reason why I selected these 2 workshops was because up to this point I had only worked with stonewares and in porcelain, so I wanted to learn more about working with earthenware bodies and different surface decoration methods. After Aeromont, I went to the University of Missouri in Columbia to do a post-bac. I discovered Bede Clark's work, who teaches there at NCECA, when I saw one of his really beautiful wood-fired jars. And after seeing the work, I got back to Williamsburg and emailed him asking if the University of Missouri offers post-bac opportunities, and he said yes, and that I was able to come for the year. Post-bacs are different in every university, but in this particular one, I took a class with the advanced students, I participated in their critiques, and I was also able to participate in some graduate level critiques. So it was a lot of one-on-one time with Bede and a lot of time to develop my work. At this point, I was investigating firing methods, in particular atmospheric firing methods. So here you can see a very similar jar form fired in wood and soda kilns. I was thinking about proportion, form, hand building different elements, and just finding my own voice in clay. After my post-bac, I went to the Northern Clay Center in Minneapolis, Minnesota for a year-long residency. While in Missouri, I applied for a lot of various residencies, and this is the one that accepted me, and I spent a year as a resident with Brady McLaren, Autumn Higgins, Michelle Summers, who are all fantastic artists. Before applying for this, I researched the organization. I made sure to know what they were able to offer me and what I could learn from the place. So the Northern Clay Center offers year-long residencies, and these have shared studio spaces. There is a small material stipend that helps cover some of the firing fees. And to me, it was also very important that they had soda kilns, because that is what I was working with at the time. And they also had different gallery spaces, an exhibition space, artist studios for people within the community, and open classrooms. When accepting these positions, it's of course important to think about your expenses and how you can pay for rent, pay for clay, just how you can support yourself. And at the Northern Clay Center, I worked as both a gallery and as an exhibition assistant in order to help support myself. These two jobs were really, really pivotal because I learned how to pack work, I learned how to ship work, and how to install really intricate sculpture, which proved to be really beneficial to my own practice. At the Northern Clay Center, I was still making functional work, looking at different colorants for glazes and how I could fire a soda kiln, but not have the effect to be overly obvious. So in these Demitasse cups, I was thinking about pattern and that relation between handle and pattern placement. I spent a lot of time researching forms and thinking about design, and you can see that research in these forms. At the end of my year-long residency, I was offered various other residencies. However, I chose to attend Kansas State University and do another year-long post-bac. So Kansas State University at the time had 5 post-bacs, 2 graduate students, 2 artists in residence, and 2 professors. I made sure to research all of this prior to accepting so that I knew what my community would look like. And I chose this because I wanted to study with Amy Santaferraro, who I had met at the Northern Clay Center, where she was doing a McKnight residency during my residency there. And the other faculty at the time was Andrew Casto, who I also wanted to have different conversations with and learn from. To me, I have found that the people are what draw me in, so I spend a lot of time thinking about the potential conversations that I could have with the different faculty or different other residents or post-bacs. At K-State, my forms became a little quieter. I was working with colored porcelains and throwing parts and carefully assembling them at the leather hard stage. These vessels were becoming less and less obviously functional and more sculptural. And this is the body of work that I used to apply to graduate schools with. So my goal at K-State was to have a really cohesive portfolio with which I could apply to graduate school, and that is exactly what I did. I spent a lot of time researching different programs, and I applied to 3, and I picked the one that best suited my needs. And the one I chose was the University of Nebraska-Lincoln in Lincoln, Nebraska. The 2 main reasons why I chose this program were because it is 3 years rather than 2, and I felt like I needed that extra time. And also it is interdisciplinary, so I wanted to have conversations with faculty outside of ceramics. At UNL, I spent a large portion of my time there looking into brutalist architecture. And my initial interest stemmed from my experiences growing in a brutalist apartment block, but over time my interest changed because I started seeing these as monuments to materials and material honesty. You can see how the building was constructed. Nothing is hidden. It's all very obvious. And also the concrete tells you about the landscape and about the land where the buildings are erected. And that is how I started thinking about my forms. I started incorporating different colored porcelains as grog to make this aggregate effect that spoke to the concrete surfaces. During my time as a graduate student, I went and attended a 2-week workshop at Anderson Ranch Art Center in Colorado. And the workshop I chose was digital fabrication. So we spent a lot of the time learning about rhino, learning about grasshopper, and making digital models. I made a model I made the mold, which I then took back to Lincoln and made this series of tiles for this wall piece. The wall piece was looking into different shadows, so I wanted to investigate both micro shadows that are very soft and pillowy and macro shadows that are a lot harder and harsher. The next summer, I went and did a residency in Berlin, and on one of my first days there, I saw this really beautiful wall piece right in the middle of the town, and it was really interesting how it kind of culminated that project. The residency that I did in Berlin was at the Zentrum for Ceramic, and I was able to do both this residency as well as the workshop at the Anderson Ranch through the help of my graduate institution. I had looked into different ways to attain funding, and I wrote grants to receive that funding. UNL paid for my workshop at the ranch as well as for the majority of my month and a half spent in Berlin. I would encourage all of you to look for opportunities for grants and ways that you can fund your research and travels. I chose Berlin because I really wanted to visit the Bauhaus archive, and my interest in Bauhaus is both because of architecture, but also more conceptually. I had found this quote by Annie Albers that states, "Formed things and thoughts live a life of their own," and I really wanted to visit this building and the archive itself. But what actually affected me more than the archive were all of these concrete walls and playgrounds around the city, especially in areas that separate East from West Berlin. And they were really interesting because they made me question what is a barrier. In this particular concrete wall, a lot of the plastic paneling has fallen off throughout the years, so this wall doesn't really keep the gaze out. It allows you to look and peer inside. So it is simultaneously hiding and revealing information, and it's really poetic and beautiful. I took that notion of the barrier and took it into the lattice, and this is where the idea of the lattice started. These pieces are assemblages that offer the potential for discovery, and they bring language and poetic suggestion. For me, they're visual poems of communication, and the lattice serves as a screen. I'm going to jump ahead a little bit to the next residency that I did, which was actually the summer at the Archie Bray Foundation in Helena, Montana. The Archie Bray Foundation used to be a brickyard, but in 1951 it became a center for clay. If you're not familiar with it, I encourage you to spend some time researching it. I spent a month and a half as a summer resident and I was able to access this beautiful facility that has amazing kilns. And I worked alongside a really wonderful and talented group of ceramic artists. What I wanted to talk to you a little bit about is the difference between short-term and long-term opportunities in terms of residencies. So a lot of the long-term residencies that I have done, I have had a specific goal that takes a little bit more time, and in particular, one was to have a really cohesive portfolio for graduate school. We're here for this month and a half. I allowed myself the freedom to really play, experiment, and work in new ways. But equally, it was important for me to meet new people and form a new community, which is what happened. Some of the new work that I made was this spiky piece that is in this picture. It wasn't even bisqued. And also this body of lattice sculptures that I'm actually working on finishing right now. They're all going to get some silver leaf and they will be hung in a really in a big installation suspended from a ceiling. This is the last slide I have for you. I hope you found this information helpful. Feel free to reach out to me through any of these platforms listed on the screen. And thank you.
Hello, everyone. How is everyone doing today? It was great to have two wonderful presentations from Iren and Aaron. I would first like to start to thank Nsika and our panelists and all of you for joining us today in this Q&A following the ins and outs. So let's get started with a few questions. My name is Nicole. I am a current FSU graduate at FSU in studio art. And I think that we can go ahead and get started with some questions regarding these wonderful presentations. And if you all have questions, now is a great time to write those in the chat and we can go ahead and start working towards those. And Aaron will be a little late today, but we will go ahead and let him in a couple minutes. And actually, Aaron, I have a question for you. So you talked a little bit about application processes and residencies. Do you have any tips for applying? Can you talk a little bit about some of the things you would have asked residencies before, or kind of just a little bit about that process?
Thank you. Thanks, Nicole. And are you asking specifically for residencies or both for grad school and residencies?
Specifically for residencies, but I think that if you want to talk a little bit about applying to graduate programs as well, that would be great.
Yeah, there is overlap in both, because I think the most important thing is to start looking at the deadlines ahead of time and making sure that you have a list, a spreadsheet of what you want to apply for, when those deadlines are, and how that application process is. Is it online? Like what platforms? Just having a lot of time to get all of the application materials together, proofread them, and as Aaron mentioned in his talk, once you have that community, that support around you, it's useful to have somebody you trust to overlook either your statement of intent or your portfolio, just that application material. Because oftentimes we're biased, it's our own work and we see it one way, we understand our own writing one way, but we need somebody else to read it and tell us candidly if the work and the words don't match up, if we're actually putting our best work in that portfolio. And yeah, starting early, I think is my biggest suggestion, having that list going. I have one right now on my laptop. I have those deadlines. I'm keeping track of them. I do put reminders on my calendar, both on my phone and on my Gmail. And I trick myself. I actually have that deadline listed maybe a week or two early, just so that I have a little bit of extra time. And if I do miss it, I haven't actually missed the real deadline. It's just my fake made up one. Um, yeah, those are just some things that are important.
I think that is always helpful, setting deadlines, and I like this idea of tricking yourself for success. Always very helpful. And actually, since we're on this topic of applying, what are some tips for applying for grants? You know, residencies, and like you said, there was some overlap with graduate school. How does some of that application process for grant writing come into play?
In terms of grant writing, a lot of the grants that I have written and received are tied with the institution where I am at the time. So in graduate school at the University of Nebraska-Lincoln, uh, there were a lot of funds that I could access, and I just spoke with different faculty, both on my committee, but also just in the School of Art, and I asked where I can access that funding, because some are pretty obvious. Like funding for the thesis committee at UNL was pretty easy to apply for, but there was other funding that was a little bit more nuanced and maybe just under the radar. So talking to people who have more information and more experience in the organization is definitely helpful. And having more eyes on that application. Being critical of yourself, being critical of what the documents look like. And once you do have that grant, writing thank you letters and thank you emails to those who have helped you along the way, and the organization that has given you the funding and the money to help you with the research and your travels. And Aaron mentioned the same thing, just, being kind and, being a good member of the community, because we are a really small community. So just set a good example and be kind to others in the field, no matter what level they are, even if they are just starting out undergrads or if they are your mentors. Just be kind to everybody.
I think that's a great set of advice. You know, building community, as you mentioned, you and Aaron both really talk about how that comes into play, as we're artists as well. And I would just like to let everyone else know, if you just came in, you are encouraged to write your questions in the chat and we will address those as a group. And another question, Iren, of your residencies, and this applies to grad school as well, what are some of the questions you wish you had asked prior to your time attending grad school, residencies? Sometimes you don't know what you don't know. And what are some things you could reflect on prior to applying, or things you would have done differently?
That's such a good question. I think from the first residency that I did was at the Northern Clay Center, or the first structured residency, and I didn't know much, so I think I kind of went in without doing as much research as I could. I would recommend just spending more time researching the organization and who the other residents are going to be, what exactly that structure would look like, how big are the studio spaces. I did not ask that, and I had hopes of making bigger work, but because my studio space was fairly small and I shared it with somebody else, that was limiting. And I learned from my mistake of not doing my thorough research. And from that experience, I asked surface level questions. I knew that we would have to pay for some of the firings, but I did not ask how much each firing would be. And as you're leaving undergrad where you don't have to pay for firings, it's a little eye-opening once a soda kiln is over $100, because it is a gas firing and it's a long firing. So just again, like doing that research ahead of time, asking your mentors if you're missing something important that you're overlooking, that you have taken for granted just because your institutions have provided that for you. Yeah, I think that's some of my advice.
That's great. Thank you. Well, there is a couple of questions in the chat. First from Dina. Iren, who is your support system academically? Would you ask for help? What are some sources that you frequently visit to look for these opportunities?
Some of my support system is actually on this chat right now. One of them is Pete Pinnell. So my faculty in graduate school were really wonderful and have supported me throughout that time, but also I keep in regular contact with them. And also my faculty from undergrad and from my post-bac experiences. I try to give them phone calls. I do write letters sometimes or send postcards and just keep in touch to make sure that they know what I'm doing, but I also genuinely I don't want them to forget about me as a person, not just as a maker. Um, because I did emigrate to the United States, I feel like I had to learn how to keep in touch with people. I had to learn how to write emails and kind of keep up with my family, my friends, and not lose them. So that experience has helped me with that. I hope. I'm always aiming to do better, of course. But my community is also made up of members from my residencies at the Northern Clay Center. I was a resident with Brady McLearen, who is currently a graduate student at Alfred, and I keep in touch with him. My studio mate at the University of Nebraska-Lincoln was Kat Cox, and she is one of my best friends. We talk daily and we send each other opportunities in terms of residencies, shows, jobs. We just want to see each other succeed. And that's what friendship and community is. You genuinely want to see somebody be better than you, or do the best that they can be, because that's support. And some sources, well, in terms of residencies, a lot of it is word of mouth. A lot of it is Instagram research, if you can call it that. But just like Aaron mentioned, it's sending opportunities to others sending you opportunities, and having that list. I have a really long list of residencies that I want to apply for, and they're tiered. So some of them I'm not ready for that yet. I'm not where I need to be in my career. Like Skowhegan is a residency that is really well known, but I feel like I need to wait a little bit, especially in those residencies where once you apply, you have to wait a certain number of years to reapply. Like that one, you have to wait 3 years. And because I do forget these residencies or my goals and where I want to apply, that's why having this physical list and maintaining it and getting new deadlines, current deadlines up is helpful.
Organization seems to be a very important part. And there is a question in the chat from Chanda, and you kind of touched on this prioritizing of, which residency is coming up next, which was going to impact your career the most at this current time. But thinking about what Aaron had also said about making time for yourself and taking a break, how do you find time to really prioritize that work balance?
Mm-hmm. That's the hardest one, and it looks different for everybody. Everybody needs rest means a different thing to them, and they need different amounts of it. For me, I really love traveling and meeting new people and constantly going to new places. So applying for residencies and working really hard at those residencies is a form of rest for me. It really kind of refreshes my process and my thinking. But there are times, especially after this, pandemic, where it's been really hard emotionally and for everybody and mentally. It's important to listen to yourself and say no to an opportunity if it doesn't seem right, and just say, be truthful to yourself when you need that time to just relax, read a book, not leave your house, or maybe just go hiking and camping. And that's a form of, it might be rest, but it could be also productive rest, because once you take the time for yourself, when you enter the studio, you are ready to work and you feel good.
Absolutely. Hello, Aaron. Welcome.
Hello.
Hey.
Thank you for a wonderful presentation. And we
Awesome.
are actually just talking about a little bit of self-care, prioritizing things that you touched on in your talk, that work-life balance. Would you like to add anything to that?
I will say it wasn't until this year when I started to kind of value my me time. I like have a habit of being in overdrive all the time. And so this year I've like been telling myself it's okay to like take breaks. It's okay. I mentioned in the video, not now, maybe later, like, being okay with like not taking every opportunity that comes my way. And framing it in a way where I can still kind of leave the door open, which also allows me to just breathe. Like right now, I'm like student teaching, and then I'm working 2 jobs. Like just finished teaching, printmaking to a bunch of kids, and hopped right on here. And so like I have a very busy schedule, and so finding time to like take care of myself, between being an educator and being an artist. I'm still like in shows, still submitting to things, and so yeah, I urge people to take care of themselves, take time. It's okay to not go to the studio. The world is not going to end. If you don't go for a day. That's, at least for me, like part of my practice is the lived experience, and so I can't really pull from that if I'm not living outside of the studio. And so if that resonates with other people, I think that living is part of your practice as well. So make sure that you do that.
Absolutely. And we were previously focusing a little bit on residencies at the moment, and there is one question, and it can be answered by both Iren or Aaron, whoever would like to go first. What are some of the biggest challenges you had to face being in a residency, or things that you wish you would have prepared beforehand?
So yeah, I just spoke, so I don't know if I want to go again, but
You should. I've been talking
okay.
to
Oh, that's true. Yeah. I have to keep that in mind. Yeah, so I did a residency at Watershed, and I thought I was prepared for like what a residency entailed, but I, I think the thing I wish I like told myself going in there was like, um, you know, it's I went this year, and it was during a time where I was actually struggling with my passion or drive to make art. And so going there, I struggled with like putting myself in the studio. And I like expected a little bit more like, I don't know, collaboration. And so I wished that I like urged myself to kind of do that. So like if you're going to residency with intentions or plans, like be prepared for maybe, your plans changing. Like I think that that's okay. Like I went there with plans. I didn't do any of that, but I still left like with gained insight from my experience there. But it took a while for me to kind of get over that hill because I was struggling with trying to make those goals like trying to make them happen. And well, trying to get myself to take the steps to make it happen. But then once I got over the fact that I wasn't going to make that happen and it's okay, like I want to do something else, I finally started making work. I started like being productive. And I think, yeah, if I had gone there with that mindset already, like going there with an open mind, I would have been even more productive. I still gained so much. So I'm like grateful that, I went and did what I did, but, I did, unfortunately, like it feels like I wasted a week, trying to battle with that internally. And it was noticeable. People like noticed that I was like like these people didn't know me at all, but like they still noticed that I was like, I was definitely a little off. Are you gonna make work? Are you like, what are you doing? And so, yeah, I think just going there with an open mind and um, yeah, just going with the flow, I think is like the big thing for this year for me. It's like when you go take opportunities and you go do things, just match how you feel in the moment and don't concern yourself about what you had planned when you got there.
Yeah, I think going kind of along with what you said is I did a residency this summer at the Archival, and we were all so secluded the past year. I went in with this mentality of, I'm not going to have any friends. I'm going to be really lonely. I'm going to read a book and just make a lot of work. And I kind of prepared for the worst. I brought a ton of books to research and read. And then I went there and everybody was really kind. Everybody wanted to be this really tight-knit community right away. There was no, I had
Is Iren frozen for everyone?
Well, hopefully.
Did I leave?
Oh, there you are. Perfect. You froze for a brief moment.
I'm sorry, I don't know what happened.
I think we were just talking about how you prepared for the worst going into this residency, and then you got there
and it was great.
Fantastic.
Am I frozen?
I mean, yes and no.
Popping in and out, but we can hear you. So, and
sorry, I don't know what happened. I haven't changed.
Who knows? This digital world. Well, and there's also wonderful opportunities are being dropped in the chat. So be sure everyone is taking a look at those URLs that are being shared. And actually, Rhonda has a question regarding, let's say to you both as well. Can you each share an opportunity that you were surprised you received? I really like this question. What made it feel out of reach and what encouraged you to apply anyway? Aaron.
Okay. I actually talked to a couple people, but when I received the Emerging Artists Award with Ceramics Monthly this year, I honestly wasn't really expecting it, only because I don't know. I just felt like maybe I wasn't prepared for it. But Patty Chalmers, who was my professor in undergrad, she told the one thing I took from her. I think I mentioned it in the video as well. But like, I apply for everything, and that's because of her. Like, she told me that it's not up to me. Like she told us like we are our own worst critics. We always think we're not ready for things. We're not ready for opportunities. But we're not on the committee deciding for things. The committee is the one that's making the decisions. And so if they pick you, then in their eyes, you're ready for the opportunity. And so, I applied my very first year in ceramics. Like, she had us apply, like, and I told her, like, I'm definitely not ready for that. She's like, apply anyways. Like, you'll get used to it, just apply. And so it became a habit of like every year applying to the Emerging Artists Award, getting those rejections and not like, making it a big deal. Like, okay, yeah, I got rejected. It's fine. I'll apply next year. And so, yeah, getting it, I was like in that mindset because I got used to just like applying and not getting it. So when I actually got it, I was like, what? Like, no, this is the year, this is the time for it. I am glad that I got it with the body of work that I make like currently. But yeah, that definitely was a shock. And I only got that because, Patty kind of ingrained in me to apply for anything and everything. If it interests me, apply for it. If it's a big opportunity and I qualify, apply for it.
That is such great advice. Absolutely.
Yeah, and especially if it's free to apply for. might as well just put your application in the pool. Yeah, and some of these things that I've applied, I have work in a couple biennials right now, and I just applied because I had half an hour in between classes, and I was like, well, I can't get work started. Might as well get some computer work done. But another thing to consider with being accepted in some of these opportunities is the unexpected labor that comes with them. Like part of this sending work to Italy, I had to spend probably a week creating the work and then shipping the work. So I feel like these are things that we don't think about or talk about, but it is a lot of labor. It takes time. It's hard work. And as an educator, I'm trying to do a better job in preparing my students for that, because it's something that I feel like I wasn't prepared for in my undergrad career. It was never mentioned. So I want to make sure that I'm helping my undergraduate students feel like they know how to pack a sculpture and have it make it there alive and in one piece.
Absolutely. It wouldn't, it would be counterintuitive if the work never arrived, right? Or maybe in pieces, multiple works. And so kind of thinking about, residencies, graduate schools, this process is, we talked a little bit about having mentors and getting eyes on your writing and your applications. But Hannah Johnson has a question in the chat. How did you know when you were ready to apply to residencies and graduate schools? Can you talk a little bit about this idea of being ready? Iren, would you like to go first?
Sure. Along with what Aaron said, I don't know if you're ever feel like you're ready, or if you ever know that you're ready for either one. It's just putting that application together and sending it into the world. And sometimes it is because you need to get that practice of applying and getting rejected. That's useful too. Getting used to those no's is good. It's healthy because there's a lot of it. It's a part of the game that we're in. But for graduate school, I knew that I was ready because in the residency I was in, I wasn't having that critical conversation, and I felt like my work was stagnating. And I really wanted somebody to challenge me. And I love school. I really love school. And that's why I
Yes.
want to be an educator, is because I love being in school and learning from either my professors or from my students. It's a symbiotic relationship. Both of those are. So I knew that I wanted to be a part of that, and I knew that it's unlike a residency. You have to change your mentality, your work, your writing, and you have to respond to what others say. You're not in your own bubble. And I know that for some students, that's a hard thing to understand, especially if they've been doing residencies for a long time, is when somebody tells you or challenges you. And I wanted to be challenged.
Yeah, for me, it's really boiled down to like two things. I like to do things. Like I like school. I like to do things. So being in grad school or going to residencies, like those satisfy things that I like in life. And so that's always, for me, that's always there. So for me, it was just like, one, do I like my work? And then two, do I have enough of that work to apply? So they have like a 10 image, requirement. If I don't have 10 images of work that I like, then I can't apply for it. But once I got there, it's like, okay, well, I'm gonna apply then. Same thing for 20. Like if there's 20 images, if I don't have 20 images, I can't apply. But if I do, I'm gonna apply. So that's what it really boiled down for me, is can I apply based off of what the requirements are? Because I naturally like to be in school. I like to go do things, go be places. But if that's like something that you're not, that you don't feel, in my mind, I like to think that you don't really know until you go do something, so you should apply anyways. And then when you go, you might end up finding, oh, I am ready. If you go and you're like, oh, I'm not ready. I mean, you have the control to like not do it again or like leave the program and go later. Like you have that ability. I think a lot of people don't realize or think that they like can do that, but it's okay to like step back and start over later on. And so like, yeah, I say if you meet the requirements, like just do it, you know.
Just go for it. Yeah, absolutely.
And one other thing, you in both of those things, you have to realize that nothing is going to perfectly match your expectations. So you need to maintain your flexibility and to adjust to your new reality because nothing is perfect. That's just how the world works. And there will be things that are really great and wonderful everywhere, and there are things that you wish you could change or you wish you could be different. So just be happy with where you are and do your best in that.
That's a great addition. Yeah, thank you for sharing. And while we're still on this, we just received a question about applying with your 10 or 20 images. Is the work that you're applying with a cohesive body of work, or do you just keep adding to your portfolio? Do you start another body of work to apply to future things? How does that, in your practice between cohesive bodies, separate pieces, how do you weave those together organizationally for applications?
I think it depends on the application. For me, there's been applications where my initial reaction is to do the cohesive body of work. Like I have enough of what I make to do 10 or 20. But if I notice the application is asking for like a scope of my practice or like they use language that kind of implies that they want to see like a range of work, that's when I start pulling from other, artworks or smaller bodies of work. And then I include those in my submission. But naturally, I will try to like just do the current body of work that I want to kind of, show people, and then use others as supplements if needed based off of the wording of the application.
Yes, similarly to how Aaron's talking about it, it's you have to cater your application to the opportunity. So for some things like an award, I will include because some applications only allow for 5 images. So I'll kind of try to pick works that best represent the entirety of my practice. But for things like graduate schools or residencies, I do want it to be cohesive, but that being said, it could be cohesive both visually and conceptually. So that's where your artist statement or your letter of intent become helpful. You could kind of, you could use that as a thread to connect all of that work. And Slide Room also allows you a short description for the work too, and for some applications. So I'll utilize that if that's allowed to kind of explain the piece a little bit more. And if visually it doesn't, like it might seem out of place, that's where I can kind of explain how it ties into my larger body of work and my conceptual interest.
Absolutely. Well, I think we probably have time for one more question. And I think for students that are here for Q&A about the ins and outs, let's end on what are some good habits that you have learned that have changed your practice for the better that you would like to share with the group?
Could you repeat the question? Sorry.
What are some good habits that you have learned that have changed your practice for the better, that however you want to interpret that in terms of time management, to the work, practice? Any advice to give?
I feel like
I already said, I'm just saying her name again, Patty. Uh, the work that I make now is that I really, really enjoy making is mostly just because the last thing Patty left me with was don't be afraid to get weird with your work. And she just meant like explore, make bad work, make work and, explore material, explore, ideas, techniques, and don't get caught up in it being like a portfolio piece. Like just make work. And along the way, you'll hit something. And I think doing that really allowed me to kind of break free from a lot of the things that I felt I struggled with in my previous work. And so, that was like, I do it occasionally. Like, I make work. There's a lot of work I make that I don't show people and won't show people. But I'm constantly learning and evolving my work because of the play. So I think playing is very important.
Yeah, playing. Make sure that you experiment in grad school. And I don't know if Pete knows this, but Kat and I would have 1 or 2 pieces a month that were kind of the weird stuff that we would make. And we would put those through the kilns and see what would happen. And even now I'll make that and I'll send a picture to Kat and she'll be like, that's your weirdo, isn't it? I'm like, yeah, it is. And it's just a place where you can kind of let go of those expectations and try something else and explore a different part of yourself, because I feel like the work that I make it's certainly a part of me, but it's not all of me. And I can make different work differently. And you can kind of see behind me, this is the work that I'm finishing for my residency. And I also make this weird spiky stuff too, because I kind of get angry at this meticulous kind of measuring of everything. So I want to just stab the piece with clay. So sometimes listening to your intuitions is helpful. And in terms of applying to things, contact your recommenders ahead of time and thank them generously and profusely.
Absolutely. That is fantastic advice. Thank you. Always keep playing in your work. Aaron, Iren, thank you so much for these wonderful presentations. Again, Nsika, thank you for putting on this wonderful symposium. And thank you all to our viewers who joined us today for the presentations and this Q&A. Hope you all have a wonderful night. Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you, everyone. Have a great weekend.
Yes, you too.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you all.